and masculinity. So we'll just talk about our own experiences and shit like that. I don't know. And then later on we'll get into complex stuff if that's what you want to do.
Uh, hello.
Yeah, man,
Wonder
I'm here.
what
Can you
this
hear
is
me?
doing. Yeah, so apparently this is going live. This is a test.
One,
So
two.
today we're going to be talking about what the hell is wrong with our species. A particular aspect of one of the many things wrong with our society is the way people are socialized into certain gender roles. Now we're both men, and so we experience society as men. So we're going to be talking about at least our experience of how we think, we have been socialized to think certain things about ourselves. Uh, Jeremy, do you have any thoughts on the subject?
Well, I can tell my own personal experiences. Growing up here in Sydney, in the 90s and early 2000s, I can say that I still believe that a patriarchy is still in existence here. Growing up myself, I mean, I attended all my schooling here, and we were told from a young age. I mean, I went to a Catholic school when I was younger, and then moved into a state-funded public school, and now I've just finished university, I think anyway, waiting my results. And since primary school, I've always noticed men within the educational institution and greater society, we're always told that you have to be competitive, you have to be tough men. You always have to, who gives a fuck about everyone else? You have to be number one. And just this whole competitive, aggressive sort of mindset is just drummed into us from such a young age. And it's not just within the educational institutions there. I mean, you look at what young men like doing for entertainment. Shit that I like doing, but I'm not mad about like I used to be, of course, because it's not that important. Shit like video games, sports, the kind of music out there. It's all really aggressive. It just sort of serves to reinforce those patriarchal norms that women are to be seen as inferior. This is a society that is predominantly ruled by men. You can check the facts, check the statistics. Women are still, to some extent, it's obviously not as bad as it was 50 or 100 years ago, but women are still, there's still a big gap in pay. Um,
Depends
you
what
know,
part of the world you're in as well. I mean,
sorry.
it depends what part of the world you're in as well. I mean, you know, but yeah, sorry to interrupt. You were on a roll, I guess. So I guess a lot of these concepts need to be unpackaged and explored. I guess, yeah, in terms of like this competitive outlook, I was sort of in my adolescence or whatever. Actually, as a young boy, I watched a lot of action movies. Ones with
Yeah,
Arnold
same here.
Schwarzenegger,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and yeah, and I guess as a young boy, I was obsessed with like the size of my muscles
Yeah,
and being
I was
strong.
never that sort of a type. Yeah.
And
Sorry, keep going.
and, and I used to do like a lot of push-ups as a kid, like a lot more push-ups than I would do now. Like I would do like I actually had like pretty like beefy arms as like a 8-year-old because I would do all these push-ups because
Yeah.
I guess I wanted to be like Arnold Schwarzenegger, and I guess I was like, oh, I want to be that strong, basically to
Mm.
mean, I guess, if the concept of being strong or whatever, like no one would fuck with you. I mean, obviously it's a
Well,
complete
exactly.
fiction, but I guess as a young person watching the fiction, like no one would fuck with like, the commando in that movie. You know what I mean?
Well,
Like he
exactly.
wouldn't have to like engage in like being vulnerable or like careful dialogue or admit to doing wrong. It'd just be like, he's right, and if anyone disagrees, they can get the fuck blown out of them. And I
Yeah.
guess those ideas have affected the way I've engaged as an adult. Like as an adolescent, I was very much into playing chess, and that
Yeah.
was all about beating your opponent and trying to be better
Of
than them.
course. Yeah.
And then
Game. Yeah.
and then I got into stand-up comedy, and I wanted to be the best stand-up comedian. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, a lot of sort of, I mean, doing comedy in front of a group of people who listen to me and my opinions. And
Yeah.
and now,
Yeah.
sorry.
Sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah. Anything else?
Oh, I guess now as an activist or whatever, like I think about activist stuff, and I think I've got a tendency to yeah, maybe kind of, I don't know, use people for activist goals or relate to people in a way that isn't necessarily empowering them, but trying to like perhaps go, oh, you should do this because it'll be good for the cause. And yeah, I don't know what to do about that stuff. And sometimes I feel like I'm trapped in like like in Superman movie, where one of the Superman movies where like the bad guys were trapped in this like glass thing floating through space.
Yeah, yeah.
Sometimes I feel like I'm like that.
Okay, that's fair enough. And as you were saying before about how entertainment, especially movies and stuff, create those patriarchal norms and basically just brainwash an entire generation of young men into thinking, it's good, you got to be tough, you got to be hectic, you got to be a thug. I remember, especially when I was in high school, a lot of the young guys, that I would see around the area in which I lived, they always had this, they were into the gangster rap, always like, oh, we're the Crips, bro, we're the Bloods, bro, and it just in a way divided people so unnecessarily. And I never really allowed that to have much of an impact on myself, but as being someone that was sort of different, nerdy or so to speak, when I really wasn't, but I just wasn't into that whole being a thug shit. So I wouldn't say I was bullied endlessly, but there were some times that people would say things like, "Oh, you're a faggot, bro. You're a gay," and all that, using pig Latin and all that stupid nonsense that kids do or did and still do now. I just see you look at those attitudes; they transcend into later life, of course. I mean, that whole competitive, philosophy that we're brainwashed with leads to, it transcends into the corporate world. Where in the corporate world, it's basically just fuck everyone, make money, exploit people as much as you can, and really that sort of attitude,
It's all orgasm, no
it's
foreplay.
killing us, I mean, because you look at the way these politicians and these corporate figures are, they're so self-interested, and they'll come up with the craziest ways to justify what they do. And in the end, humanity, we're the ones, all of us, we're the ones that are at risk of, succumbing to their crazy intentions.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, these systems of exploitation aren't particularly stable. And like there's been a lot of civilizations that have basically um, resulted basically, that some of the stuff we find of what's left of these civilizations, other than some of the monuments, are like hundreds of bones with teeth marks on them because they've depleted the natural resources in the area around them and lived unsustainably, and they're covered in teeth marks and bite marks and stuff when these civilizations have collapsed. You know
Mm.
the that quite possibly um, it could be how this society ends. Maybe there's a nuclear war. Those people that aren't in the immediate blast range will slowly die because their sun will be blocked out from the amount of soot. If they don't freeze to death, then they're probably running around hunting a food source
Yeah.
and probably running around killing each other. And that could be the last moments for humanity.
It's
Sounds great. How's the competitive spirit in that scenario?
exactly, yeah, yeah. That's why a lot of these great anarchist thinkers there that we're familiar with, they advocated societies based on mutual aid rather than competition. And I mean, I think Peter Kropotkin was one who noticed them. He was actually a scientist, and he, did research. I think amongst some societies, I think in northern Russia, where the way they did things there was just it was based on complete mutual aid, and instead of just competing for natural resources, it was just sharing what we had, basically just a system of creating and sharing, where there was no hierarchy, everything was horizontal. I'm getting the impression perhaps that that's the way the whole world should be, but only big question is how do we do it? The world, this whole system is so complex, and we've got a population that's too busy playing video games and watching sport and fucking watching TV all the time. How this is going to be done
Well,
is a
well,
fucking question.
I guess my experience of when I was in Black Rose, I got to sort of be part of a community an anarchist community where there were, despite my problematic behaviors, it was the first time I really got to kind of experience like a sense of like giving, where people just kind of give to each other endlessly and support each other,
Yeah.
whether it
Mm.
be developing, certain housing arrangements, or like, cooking together, dumpstering together, um, being emotional supports for each other.
Yeah.
Uh, it was a crazily fundamentally different experience than I had experienced when I was a member of this sort of stand-up comedy community, which might be
Mm.
similar to other kind of workplaces where there was like a lot of gossip, a lot of negativity, a lot of bitterness, a lot of spite,
Mm.
all
Yeah.
around this idea of like, oh well, they're getting these opportunities, I'm not. And I think that's what
Yeah.
I guess the stand-up comedy community, are functioning within a capitalist social relations where um, people are sort of elevated one
Honestly.
above each other in terms of the opportunities they get. Well, I guess in this anarchist community, um, yeah, there wasn't like a kind of, yeah, there was nothing to compete for. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know.
You think it's a
Maybe
lot more
maybe
of
I was
a
being
it's more of a
competitive
horizontal
sometimes, but I'm
sort of
not quite ready.
organization. Yeah.
Sorry?
Yeah. I mean, so you're saying it was a much more of a horizontal organization, you could say, the way it operated. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, it was sort of yeah, like people were engaged and yeah, like actually voluntarily doing things for each other and yeah, like yeah, out of these kinds of like people just kind of share all the time, just doesn't matter if they're out of money, they'll just share, they'll just give, 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 give. It was great, it was
It
awesome. It
was
was
excellent. I mean,
yeah. Sorry?
sorry. I mean, I'm just saying,
Oh, I
the
was just saying.
more you go ahead, I just think your
Oh, I
voice
mean,
is
I think that was. So I think maybe that should be enough for a test or whatever.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
voices are cutting out, I think, yeah.
and but yeah, maybe what we could do is we could do some readings and stuff, like maybe read like an essay or a text on some cool subject, talk about
Yeah,
it, and then maybe we could critique the reasoning of some of the right wing thinkers, whether it be
yeah.
like ANCAPs or like men's rights
Conspiracy
activists or
theories,
like
yeah.
conspiracy theorists and all that kind of shit.
Sounds like a great idea, yeah, because there's a ton of shit out there that we could critique and plenty of good stuff out there as well for us to sort of explain in an easy to understand way to people who'll be watching. But we'll do our best. What can I say? Yeah, good shit.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think sometimes, I think sometimes a lot of propaganda, if we're to make published videos or whatever doing this or a podcast, although it provides an opportunity to maybe think about these ideas, like a lot of the time, propagandizing and stuff just furthers one's own understanding, you
Mm,
know,
mm.
in terms of
Yes, people
the
don't usually
results. But
respond to information. Yeah.
or or just practicing being able to make these arguments to people in a way that yeah, really, really becomes convincing or whatever. All right, shall
What
we
can I
leave it
say?
there?
We'll just leave it there. Good one.